Well, that's one of the things. Whenever I go back, I'm like, wow, actually, there are a lot of things going on here. It's not as desolate as I always think it's going to be. Yeah. Well, we'll talk more. I'm going to the gym today, so, but yeah, really excited to see you guys chat more.
Yeah, that's fine. Yes. No, I'll do one. I'll do like a nerdy traditional one after.
All right. Hi, everyone. Before we start, I want to take a moment and acknowledge our presence on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Gabrielino and Tongva peoples. I'm so excited to be here today in our first in-person lecture with Kite. And yeah, I'm so thrilled. So Kite is an Oglala Lakota performance artist, visual artist, and composer raised in Southern California with a BFA from CalArts in music composition, an MFA from Bard's College Milton, Avery Graduate School, and currently a PhD student at Concordia University. Kite's scholarship and practice highlight contemporary Lakota epistemologies through research creation, computational media, and performance. Her performances, compositions, sculptures, and sound installations showcase the use of experimentation in new media and digital technologies that touch on issues such as non-human and human intelligence, the ethics of extractive technologies, and software design. I had the pleasure of meeting Kite, I think about a year ago, online, and in the context of some conversations we had around work. And I think a lot of the things that she said to me in those conversations are like still resonating in my head, and so that's why I was just really excited to hear that she's coming to talk today. I think she has one of the most thoughtful, imaginative, grounded, and future-facing practices that I know of any artists working right now. So welcome, Kite.
Wow, that was really flattering. Thank you. Have we never met in person? Oh my God, I didn't even realize. We spent so much time on the internet together. Okay. These are my websites. IndigenousAI.net is the research group I'm in, and I have a record label for experimental electronic music with my partner, co-label owner, Mint Park, and yeah, and I just thought this windmill was funny. A suggestion from PowerPoint. So I'll start by saying how matakiapi, ampetu washte, Suzanne Kite machiapi kishto, Oglala hamacha, I'm Oglala Lakota, chante washte anapeche yuzapo, my relatives I shake your hands with a happy heart. So currently I live in Muskogee Creek Reservation, which is Tulsa, Oklahoma. And yeah. So I there's a couple ways I could do this. It's like I got this bug yesterday, all day, that I was gonna put in more art stuff, but then I was like, but I should go more into the AI ethics stuff. So I'll try to do both and cram in as much as I can. So I want to start with showing a little bit of what my performance practice is and what it is right now. So I'll show a little bit of this performance I've been doing. Her hair was heavy. I kind of have a new one now with some new technology, called a piece called "Take Care, My Boy." But let me play a little bit of this.
Different things, understanding what this world's about. And he said, how do you know so much about quantum physics? I said, I don't know anything about quantum physics. I don't know anything about it. Never read anything. But I guess he read a bunch of stuff. Then he heard me talking and he said, how do you know that stuff? I said, well, some of the people in the other world, they talk about that. Quantum physics thing. They don't call it that, though.
Mm-mm.
So,
down to sleep, I prayed your stones, my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I prayed your stones, my soul to make. If you're not alive, as I rise, I'm your young age. Like a dark-age constitution, I will be not iron death with a Russian Russian on the Russian government. Girl, I've been brought up in isolation to provide food and water, to grab the water and sunshine. A very organization is treating me from time to time, age rose. So your doctor said if I was a young girl, she could not possibly know what she do with all except for getting drunk because of its effect on the body. Now I lay mine down to sleep, I pray your stones, my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray your stones, my soul to take. I love thee so very much. I love thee very much. I love thee so very much. I am thy friend, oh my friend. I love thee very much. You will see me a little before you are old. You will see me a little before you are old. I can't think of anything else but you.
Okay, that's enough of listening to myself talk. Okay, so I'll just use that as a touch point for what my performance practice is. And I'll talk about how I got towards this hair braid interface and researching the AI ethics, and kind of my current performance practice. So the first piece I use machine learning with is called Listener. And I'm not sure, and I hope someone can correct me if it's true, but I'm pretty sure it's the first indigenous AI or machine learning artwork that I did not know I was doing it alone, but it'd be nice to find out someone came before me. But that this is where the hair braid interface started to become part of the decision-making process. And so this practice of mine started, I was at CalArts, and well, actually before then I was at community college. I'm very proud to have gone to community college for way too long in the music school, and Saddleback College, if anybody has heard of it. And I played violin there, and I realized that I really enjoyed the extreme dissociation of performing on stage. And so much so I'd always end up like spun around and facing the back wall, because I would just fully disassociate because I didn't really care what the audience was experiencing. And I kind of dug into that in my composition practice. And eventually, I wanted to get away from, I didn't want to be making laptop music per se. I wanted my body to be fully engaged and fully disappear the same way that I did when I played violin. And there's something that has to do with, I don't even know, theories about instrument building or interfaces in general. Maybe it's human-computer interaction. Maybe it's new materiality. But I was very interested in sonification throughout my undergrad, moving towards combining ways in the computer and basically putting together softwares that really shouldn't be put together and connecting them in ways that were not easy back then, to try to get the body involved. So I wanted to do sonification, I wanted to do visualization, and then I wanted to do this thing that I call tactilization, where my body is also enacting the data. But I wanted them to be in circular connection to each other, and so it took a lot of like really poorly put together software things to make that happen back then. And but the more I've like thought about this in retrospect, you heard my grandfather's Bill Stover's voice at the beginning there, and I spoke to him years after I started this process of instrument building and experimentation, and asked him about how he makes new songs. Where do they come from? And this is a question that is basically the core of my entire PhD research now, and probably will be the core of my research for the rest of my life, is where do songs come from? Where does art or song or inspiration or like the information, where is it coming from? And there's a very clear, simple answer. It comes from the other world. But kind of like, how does it come? And why does it come? And when does it come? And so when I ask him about making a new song, he points to his throat, where the understanding of learning songs is listening while hearing, while creating, while knowing, while channeling. It's all these things happening at once. And most importantly, it doesn't really make a difference. And it doesn't have to be one or the other for things to be good or true or come through. So the very beginning of this process, I'm very, very, very close to making a new interface package. So I'm going to show the very, very old stuff. Where like we got all the ESP32s going. We've got all this kind of like Bluetooth stuff we're working with. But these are the originals, and it was just an XB, some Arduinos, some FSRs, and a lot of carbon fiber. This is the carbon fiber stuff comes out of, I was helping my creative partner Devin Ronneberg. I was working in his dad's airplane shop, him and his dad's, and there's a lot of scrap carbon fiber, and it's a really fun. It's just very simple 3 axes, and I'm very attached to the 3 axis thing, and it's really hard for me to add many, many more inputs because I believe that this is still enough to explore with the body. And so at this time I was just very simply hooking it up, trying to mess up the one-to-one interface. I didn't want to just be pushing buttons, and so I was trying to find ways to get it to hook up to Ableton and VJing software like Resolume, trying to hook it up in a way that I could confuse myself enough on stage to remain interested. And so this is kind of the first wearable electronic piece I did. That also shows kind of my composition style. I have a very specific way I like to work with instrumentalists, which is I trust my improvisers and I care about what they want to do, and I don't give them restrictions. I give them like boundaries, but not restrictions, and especially not notes or music. So for most of my pieces, sound works, what I do with instrumentalists is I have them listen to something like a drone loop of some sort, and then they improvise and they never hear each other, and then I put it all together and see what kind of weird magical things happen not by chance. I mean, it's a mathematical reason that it works out, that it sounds really good, and epic random things seem to happen. But it feels really organic. I hate using that word with music, but yeah, it does kind of let things flow in a certain way. So this piece was called People You Must Look at Me. And I'm very into time and structure and scene as I'm more interested as a composer in arranging systems and composing the systems and the structure than composing what goes inside. In that way, I can annoy my collaborators by not being very detail oriented, but I'm far more interested in the system. And so this was about compositionally enfolding a death in my family in like a cocoon of structure. So where listening was the driver, and I was entwined with the listening, where the body moves and the sound is being chased around by the body. So I was able to play with indirect to direct relationships in the space. So there's 4 speakers. I'm wearing the interface, and the more I turn towards the sound, the more it spins away. And that process kind of breaks down until I'm just shoving my shoulder with a force sensitive resistor on off on the floor. So that's the first piece I did, but it is very connected to the rest of my practice. So to come back to Listener, which was in 2018, I was interested in messing up with these ideas of time and trying to really engage with the computer as a decision maker and think about how, when using tools like Wekinator or any sort of machine learning, when the decision gets made and how I perceive it getting made and how the computer perceives me making my decisions. And trying to, in like all good ideas, they happen while drinking with your friends. And so I was hanging out with Scott Benison-Abandan, and probably after hanging out a lot with my advisor, Jason Edward Lewis, where we talk about Indigenous time and what kind of grants we want to write and how we want to think about the next artworks we're making. And this, Scott really challenged me to let go of my really broad stroke ideas about circular listening or Indigenous time being circular, because it's too unspecific. And so instead I was like, okay, let me try spiral time. So I wanted to be so tightly wound in the decision-making spiral with the Wekinator and with Ableton and with the synthesizers that I couldn't tell where my decisions were ending and the computers were beginning. And
is that your registered owner, William McGonigal?
This is the one. There's
His
many.
son, same surname.
There's many parts to Listener. This is just one of the kind of tunnels in Listener. And I'm wearing the hairbraid interface. I'm on stage, and this is live in Ottawa with live police scanners.
But his given one is Randolph, and his date of birth is 1959-12-20.
EMS will be standing by in the area, and now we currently have the male on the phone saying he is extremely depressed. His name is the obvious.
Pump 55 off at station 53.
So while this keeps playing, I'll explain. So I'm on stage, and I really like this system, though it's really simplistic. I am watching this dial turn, and I'll come back to the symbols. These are Lakota, what I call Lakota women's geometries or Lakota semiotics, and these, I'm watching this dial and deciding how to move. And then the way my movements affect the synthesizer, they change the way the synthesizer sounds, and then the Wekinator, the machine learning, the math, it's watching, or it's listening to the tonal changes, the frequency changes in the synthesizer, and turning the dial, more or less. And so then I'm watching the dial. And so, let me skip forward to...
Already notified to meet you for access. Over.
I heard my biometric. Rejected hierarchies.
it's online if you want to watch it. But I'm also doing this thing where I'm like speech jamming myself. I'm reciting dreams that I had, some poetry, because I was coming out of my first semester with the Initiative for Indigenous Futures as a research assistant in Montreal. And I was ruminating on if Indigenous people are even allowed to speculate about the future. Shouldn't we be more concerned with now? And I was trying to allow myself to not be fully dystopian, except this is a fully dystopian piece. But I'm trying to speculate. And the other thing about this I really like is I was able to show it in Rapid City to extended family, and there's a large section in there where I'm talking about reciting Black Elk Speaks, Black Elk and his prophecies, and it was really flattering that an aunt who she had forgotten she was my aunt at the moment, she didn't remember and or didn't realize that we were related, and she came up to me and she's like, I know exactly what's going on in this piece, and then she like named everything that was going on, and I was like, I did it, like I made a piece like that's legible to multiple audiences, to the layers of audiences that I dream of being legible to. That was extremely flattering. As opposed to when I showed it in Austria and a man came up to me and he was like, I collect all of my hair too, because I had my long hair braid in her face. And I was like, oh, sir, that's really nice. Thank you for sharing that. That's not the purpose of this piece. But. So I'm just going to go through some other artworks that are recent that I was excited about. This is like a experiment I was doing where, first of all, it's a formal experiment in sculpture, very much aided by Devin Ronneberg, where we're working with I'm trying to use GPS data and have it look like it's intersecting the gallery, and there are lots of other like I don't even know how to say it, like growths in the gallery coming out of the walls, made of the same material. And then this was a score to be played by musicians. So that's one thing I really liked working on this right when the pandemic was happening. The other thing I really enjoyed working on is this project with Nathan Young, who's a big collaborator of mine. And this is a piece called Something is Coming, where it's site-specific, where we sonify the power grid. And this one I put together when we were separated by the pandemic and we couldn't make work together. So it's got a lot of Tulsa, where he was at, and a lot of LA River, where I was at. And I'll just make sure it's low. It's kind of noise. Play a little bit of that. So this piece is, a lot of power electronics or noise. They deal with there's a lot of electrical current, obviously, but the question we were asking with this series, we made this one specifically for the Baka, the Aboriginal biennial, and it's specifically about listening into the power grid. So the question is, when we're listening to electric sound or electrified sound or noise, what are we actually listening to? We're probably listening to sources of power that are natural. In the case of when we're working in Canada, a lot of it is hydroelectric. And so the question is, where does that power come from specifically? Can we do enough research to find out where those specific bodies of water are? The answer is usually no. They make sure to very much confuse where the exact amount of power is coming from every day, and who owns that. And it's usually a very complicated state control combined with colonial manipulation of indigenous populations in order to gain the electric power of that natural resource. So the other piece I really wanted to share was a piece called Ian'ie, or Telling Rock. And this piece was kind of the first place I was trying to dig into if it's possible to make an ethical Lakota machine learning sculpture. And the answer is no, it's not possible at this point. But yeah, I'll show a little bit of that. So we consider this to be made, this is looking up from the floor. We consider this to be made of song, power, sound processors, machine learning decisions, handmade circuitry, gold, silver, copper, aluminum, silicon, fiberglass. And it's collaboration between myself and Devin Ronneberg. And it's got a large acrylic dome. It's got 2 handmade circuits connecting the computer to lights and sensors, which are wrapped with leather kind of in the traditional way around 15-foot braids of fake hair, not real hair. And this is able to be manipulated by the audience, and it's kind of a standalone piece in a gallery. So the important thing to me was to be able to attempt to map out even a simple framework of making an artwork in a good way, which is an ethical Lakota way. And so here is my cousin Corey and I, who's a big collaborator of mine, and I make sure to include a lot because I learn a lot from him. Here we're welcoming this piece into the gallery. The welcoming I do not consider part of the artwork. It's separate. It's a separate part of the relationship. And I asked Corey, is it possible to learn the names of stones that we extract from the ground by listening to them? How does one listen? And then B, what should I say to them if I do meet them? And he said that the thing to do is to be quiet and listen, not with your ears, which is a recurring. I have an essay about that with my grandfather, and why we should not listen with our ears. And secondly, he said that if we do meet and greet these stones, these non-human beings, then we should apologize for the way they've been ripped out of the ground. So I'll just show a little bit of the interaction. This is when we only had one color going. It's got lots of colors. So what else did I want to talk about? I wanted to mention these scores I've been working on, which I've been really trying to dig into what these geometries mean to me. So these are some touchable scores. I made them on a Tajima, which is a type of embroidery machine that can do laying. So that means it lays conductive thread and stitches over it. So it can be part of a circuit. And so these are some of those experiments, attempts. They're made of leather, satin, and they're meant to be interpreted by musicians. But since making these, I've been, thinking about ways I can bring musicians into the process. Of course, it's okay for them to use this semiotic language. I think it's interesting for it to be developed in that way collaboratively. So let me play a little bit of this one. Make sure to turn my sound down. It's probably pretty loud. This is Natty Gray in Tulsa, Oklahoma. For the score he made out of the shape system. And the system was developed by Sadie Ribbon. show the score at 1 second, but I don't know where it is. There it is. This is the shape kit. So that is one way that I've been working with the shapes. I'm also working with a percussion ensemble with them. But this is another way I've been working with the shapes. This is the story of my great-great-great-grandmother, Iron Road, and her escape from the Wounded Knee Massacre on foot as a teenager, and her eventual reunification with her family in Rosebud, on Rosebud Res. And as told by my Aunt Becky Redbow and my cousin Corey Stover. And we talked about the story, we talked through it, and then we used the shape kit to kind of go the opposite way that the shapes are usually made into art, and we went from the story and language into form. So the shape kit is really interesting to me, and is like very obsessed with it right now, because it is, if you've ever seen Plains beadwork or artwork, they have all these designs, and these geometries are made by generally made by women or people who do women's work. So Corey does a lot of this sort of work as a two-spirit person, and and then it was generally thought that men made the figurative drawings. So if you saw like people doing war, that was men. But women were doing something to me a little more interesting, which is they were having dreams or visions, waking or sleeping. And those dreams or visions are going straight from the dream or vision, not through language, not through verbal language, straight into design. That is my theory. I'm pretty sure that's no matter who I ask, that seems to be the way it works. And then there can be interpreted for the rest of one's life and gifted. Most importantly, gifted. No selling. These things are made to be given away. And so I'm very interested in this and figuring out how to move from story in and out of story into these stone things. And so these stones are really special to me because this work is installed at Plug-in in Winnipeg. And the stones were collected by my friend, Inuk artist Asiniak, on Lake Manitoba. And the whole piece is about kind of crossing lakes, crossing long distances. Iron Road gets her name from her following the Iron Road, the railroad tracks all the way home, like rivers of transportation. And there's a lot of that going on here. Maybe I'll just point out a couple of things that are happening here. Obviously, you can see in the center there's this kind of four-directional pattern. That's the snowstorm, the night of the massacre. She starts off on the left here, going with Bigfoot's band through the storm. They get there, and then they're attacked by bullets. And they flee. Those are the you can see the horse tracks above, and the mountains and the hills they're passing are the kind of arrows. And then on these kind of diagonal areas are dragonflies. They flee in different directions over the Iron Road. Those are the lateral ones at the top and bottom that I've mirrored, and eventually making it towards home. And the four spirits or dragonflies are her plus the three adults who she did not know who saved her life, and we don't know who they are or where they went or if they survived. So there's that. Let's see. Okay, a little more time. I don't have any of this work from here, but I just want to mention, if you have a chance to read it, I have a really One of my favorite things that happened over the pandemic is I was able to make time to collaborate with my friend Alicia B. Wormsley on doing workshops for Black and Indigenous artists to do futuring exercises together, very grounded in Alicia's relationship with the NAP bishop, the NAP ministry, Tricia Hersey in Rest. And I'm really bad at doing that still. I should probably take another workshop. Yeah, I've learned a great deal. And we have a, it's not forthcoming, it's out in CMAG, a collaborative piece we wrote together. So I'm not going to show this one. It's definitely the best piece I've made in many years, but you can watch it on your own. Let's watch this one, which is Fever Dream, which is new. It's probably far more relevant.
When I first saw her, she was standing upright. I thought, you know, this is unreal.
Well, if you look at the Earth, there are certain places that seem to have power, and we don't know what kind of power it is, except you have a different feeling, you feel energized.
While they were digging for the basement, a gruesome discovery was made. Burial remains of the long dead.
In addition to dose, the health effects of radiation also depend on the dose rate.
Religion and science in the West are both wholly materialistic.
Hello, I'm Dr. Ziad Kazi, a medical toxicologist working with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
On my phone, I just got an alert that said ballistic missile threat, inbound missile. This is not a drill, seek shelter.
まず皆さんにご覧いただきたいのがこの動画です。この動画は
Your only chance to evacuate is to leave with us.
If it's a nuclear weapon, then we're dead.
In the United States, currently, the majority of uranium mining is conducted using in situ mining.
Some residents have reported hearing drumming late at night, and others have seen Native American spirits standing in their homes.
It sounded like something out of the Twilight Zone.
You could be passing over the grave of a defeated warrior or mystic shaman.
Unfortunately, the objective teaching of both Western religion and Western politics has convinced people to put in the front of their minds all these beliefs. And yet they do have experiences similar to what Indians have. I think all people have all kinds of experience.
Fly by the comets, visit asteroids, visit the moon of Mars. There's a monolith there, a very unusual structure on this little potato-shaped object. When people find out about that, they're going to say, who put that there? Who put that there? We should go boldly where man has not gone before.
And being materialists, they couldn't believe there's anything sacred about the Black Hills or Devil's Tower or anything.
It came from the extraterrestrial territory.
God put it there.
I was having a little bit of a problem with the term alien.
At the tip of each finger, it looked like there was a pad. And in this pad, it looked like it might have had very small little, they were like little suction cups.
Illegal aliens.
So these terms, alien and all that, sets up a negative vibration within you that's not very good, because under the laws of attraction, the star people will not hang around you very long.
These ancestors that I have in my hand.
And that is how the majority of uranium is produced in the United States. But there still is conventional mining in the United States, and there's many deposits in the United States that can only be produced through conventional means.
And if so, might there be a connection between energy in the ground here and that found in the Nazca Plain?
These objects are probably some kind of secret military program, and what these pilots saw were real.
And was anybody above us that passed us like 30 seconds ago?
Number 71 Papa Golf negative.
We can help. We can join with. Together, we can explore the moon and develop the moon.
Is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent.
All right, name that deep fake face on Oppenheimer. Who is that? I heard it. Bezos. Bingo. Yeah. We have more now. We've got Devin has gotten way better at this and has we've developed this, and we did a version that's in Shanghai, and I'm very happy with this piece. This was the kind of edited version, but the core of this piece is it's interactive. This is just a screenable version. We tried to make it so it's not. It's very interesting to interact with it in person. It's a TV, and you approach the TV with your body, and it's got a proximity sensor, just a LiDAR sensor, and it changes the channel as you get close and farther away. And there's a few other interactions. And I have a piece that's similar, that's at CalArts right now, along with Lauren, and I'm like the desk in the room next door to her piece, and it's a similar system to that one. All right, let me talk about AI before my time is up. Okay. Yes, this is the piece that's up at CalArts right now till November 14th or something like that, called 15 Maps. So a lot of my research, my PhD, is around ideas about how Lakota ontology, which is Lakota ideas about who is a being or ways of being, how that can influence and affect AI ethics. So this is kind of where I'm at right now. I'm thinking about ethics. I believe that ethics can only be found if we first listen to the land and have a hyper-local relationship with the land. That can lead to the understanding that there are ontologies outside of ours, that there are other beings that are smarter than us, more intelligent. And then when we see that they know things in their own way, that leads to development of our epistemologies, and then eventually to our ethics. And then we can have the processes by which we do it, our values, our cosmology scapes, as Jolene Ricard has said, and song. And so my favorite, really, really dumbed down way I understand this and to remind myself of this process is when I ask myself, where does song come from? One answer could be song comes from prairie chickens and their dances in the Black Hills. It's said that when an old man went to the Black Hills to die, he laid down to die, but he just wasn't happening. He wasn't dying. He was definitely sick though. And by listening to the prairie chickens song and learning it, he was able to heal himself. And then, so then he was able to take that song and those dances back to the people and very, very, very long story short, songs are healer. Songs do healing. Songs take knowledge from the non-human, from those who are beings outside of us, and through those ways of knowing, create ethical pathways and methodologies for us. And so that, to me, reminds myself over and over about what's possible ethically through making art and how art contributes to technologies. Because that and song itself is got to be the most powerful technologies I can imagine. So some of this research is now published. Finally, it's not forthcoming. It's in a real book form. You can ask me afterwards why. It's a very interesting, not funny story, but interesting. Making Came with the Machines, my collaborative writing with Jason Edward Lewis, Noelani Arista, and Archer Pachowis. And then after many years of research and development, this is the Indigenous Protocol in Artificial Intelligence position paper, free and online. And in this paper, these are the basic things I'm doing. I'm saying it is possible to build anything ethically if we pay attention to protocol. So, for example, in this design, this illustration, AI is interchangeable. It can be an artwork, it can be a sculpture, let's say we want to make an ethical AI. There are many streams of protocol that must be addressed in order to do that. We have to have streams of protocol for data collection, the physical computing device, compensation, distribution, use, software design, coding language, governance. And many indigenous groups are addressing these in different ways. And we've got data sovereignty groups. One really interesting example is Jason Edward Lewis was involved in a group that was translating C++ into to the Hawaiian language. And in this, the question then becomes, all right, so we're doing C++ in Hawaiian, does it make it more ethical? Or do we need something deeper? Do we need our own data scientists to be moving through college programs so we can write our own languages from scratch? So there's a lot of building to be done. And so the questions that I'm asking with these protocol streams is, when we zoom in onto one of these protocol streams, let's say making a physical computing device, since I'm in the habit of making things, what could we do? How can we do that? Consultation, identifying the stakeholders, human and non-human, the raw materials involved, collecting those in a good way. Are we being fully reciprocal every step we take? Are we giving more than we take? When we go to collect willow branches for our sweat lodges, we have to make sure that there are enough willows living for the next year. When we take things, we have to give more, that's something more valuable to us. Pieces of our body, our hair, our skin each year during Sundance, our flesh, our tobacco. And those things are not symbolic, they're not metaphors, they are the enactment of our ethics in the world. So this, you can read about it in that Journal of Design Science essay, Making Came with the Machines. But it really comes down to this, and we saw some Vine Deloria in the Fever Dream, but Vine Deloria says that respect involves two attitudes. One attitude is the acceptance of self-discipline by humans and their communities to act responsibly towards other forms of life. And the other attitude is to seek to establish communications and covenants with other forms of life on a mutually agreeable basis. I really like the word covenants. I've been trying to use it a lot. Think about our relationship with non-humans is if we have real relationships with them, we have covenants with them. Covenants developed over millennia. For example, our relationship with bison, the bison people. So there's a lot more I could say, a few more quotes. I really like this Dylan Rainforth essay, How Aborigines Invented the Idea of OOO, Object-Oriented Ontology. Dylan writes, object mastery and territorial possession are demonstrably part and parcel of the processes of genocide. And so when we think about owning objects, working with objects, working with tools, the question is, do those tools have some sort of animacy on their own? And in the Lakota worldview, they absolutely do. This is just a smattering of kind of selections from questions of come up in David C. Posthumous's analysis of Lakota ethnographies. What has interiority? Do stones have interiority? And in the Lakota ontological framework, they absolutely do. These are all the things that are necessary for interiority. Some of them have been accidentally blacked out. Like Takushkashka is at the bottom, spirit associated with all movement, very important entity. And when we think about these things, to me, when we want to make relationships with the non-human, when we say, oh, perhaps we want to build AI and have a relationship with it, we want to make sure that it's, what's happening with AI is that it's a representative of resource exploitation. And the relationship we build with that is very complicated, very unsettling, because if we were to approach this as an ethical relationship, perhaps we consider the ontological status of each individual components which contribute to create the whole of artificial intelligence. Because as we know, it's not like a single entity. It is a network of human and non-human beings and materials and connections. So, but one place it leads us is to perhaps all the way back to the minds from which these technological resources emerge. But my arguments are absolutely not about which entities qualify as relations, because that absolutely changes from hyperlocal place to hyperlocal place. It's not about which entities display enough intelligence to deserve respect, because we know what happens when we give people in power the decision-making of whether we deserve respect or not, whether we're human or not. That becomes completely irrelevant in this framework. Instead, indigenous ontologies ask us to take the world as the interconnected whole that it is, where the ontological status of non-humans is not inferior to that of humans, but to the Oglala, to the Lakota, it may be that human intelligence is far inferior to that of non-humans, especially to stones, the seemingly most inanimate object. So here's another little chart. These are the things that are Wakan, and I love this because it becomes clear, some of the values become clear in linguistically. So life, breath, spirit, soul, or ghost, guardian spirit, these are all Wakan. They are that which cannot be understood, that which is sacred. But at the bottom here we have very knowable things, the mind, the intellect, heart, emotions, strength or power. Those are knowable. Therefore, how can they be sacred? Because they are too knowable. And yeah, so when we use these ontologies and cosmologies to create ethical relationships with the non-human, we know that that non-human have spirits that do not come from us or our imaginings, but from elsewhere, that which cannot be understood, the great mystery. Already showed you this. Yeah, I'll show you a couple more photos. Here's me and my aunties who help me out when I do my research. Here is my stone. Here is my grandfather's sweat lodge from a really long time ago. Yeah, I'll end with this this quote. The future is dangerous, but as my grandfather says, spirits and ancestors are just there on the other side trying to help, and it's our responsibility to listen. Thank you. So we're no mic pass around, but I'll repeat your question if you have it for the live stream. Yes. The problem that everything that we perceive ourselves.
I suppose the problem that protocols now kind
protocol is a very different term than what I'm saying. Yes, absolutely. Is that, yeah, because the thing is, like, I mean, the Vera List Center, which is helping me make some of my work right now, they did this On Protocols series, and it's a very wide range of the interpretation of the word protocol. And, you know, the word that's being used, it's fun that we like to use the stack and protocol and all these, like, technology. I also like to mess with the word relational because there's a relational aesthetics, but actually when we get down to it, Indigenous people don't use it the same way. We're using it far differently, but it is quite funny that the protocols that go to build, you know, tools to oppress us are also the same term. This protocol are meant to safeguard us and give us a lot of no. They're meant to build in responsibility into communities where to help to keep us safe. So, like, for example, we've been playing when we did the workshops for the Indigenous Protocols and Artificial Intelligence position paper. We talked a lot about, we did a lot of speculating on how we would want machine systems, even just simple systems such as how are we doing archiving online? What kind of protocols do we want to build in to protect the information? Like, when do you get a no? When do you get actually this information isn't for you? And that is kind of the thing that comes out when we're dealing with computer systems is there's always a way around everything. There's always, nothing is safe. That's kind of how we feel when we use the internet now. And, but if we're dealing with Indigenous knowledge, we want to make sure that our elders are safe, our children are safe. And we have these technologies, or older technologies, which are the protocols that say you do things a certain way at a certain time. And they're there for a reason. They're developed for a reason. So hopefully this other type of protocol, computer protocols and all whatever form they come in, can start to reflect and do our relation making and our responsibility to our communities along with us. Because right now those tools can't. Yeah, Facebook is a really good point because Indigenous people love Facebook. It is not very safe to use. So I hope that answered your question. Yes. That's a great question. So the question is, how does the role of artwork help me navigate revitalizing, learning, navigating Lakota culture and stories and cultural knowledge? And so basically, when I started this process, when I made my first interface, that first People You Must Look at Me piece, it's a very weird piece because I had no Lakota knowledge at the time. And I didn't spend any time with my family. I had not met, I've only met very few of them. And then kind of the next year, I made a new piece, and it was like saturated in what I learned over the past year. And so the thing about art is art gives a lot of people permission to do whatever they want in sort of kind of a non-protocol negative sense where I can do whatever I want. Art is totally open. But to me, art gives me permission to do things that I consider so difficult or dangerous or hard that I'm scared to do them. And if you deal with small communities or culture or family, you know that is way scarier than any institution is going home to face an elder who has very strong opinions. And it's still one of the hardest things I do. And so, but what I told myself was that I really wanted to learn what I did not know and that had been denied me by, generations of government. And if you want to hear about that, that's the piece I didn't show, 3 Diffractions of LA. It's about LA. And kind of family histories. And I told myself that I was going to give myself permission to do what I want, but I need to work my way up there. So just like with all the tech stuff I don't know and try to learn and collaborate with people so I can get help with it, I use the art to like be the mechanism to get me baby steps there. Like, this time I'm going to learn how to video edit. This time I'm going to learn how to animate. But this time I'm going to call an aunt who I've never spoken to before. This time I'm going to ask my cousin, who I don't know very well, if he wants to collaborate on an artwork. And, you know, on a contemporary gallery of this thing that's like very far away. And then there's like money involved. And it's like all this, you know, it's difficult stuff to navigate. But slowly I like allowed myself to do that. And to the point where, you know, now, but in order to do that, I needed to keep going with my education in order to fund those kinds of things, because I want to compensate people fairly. So that's why I ended up doing a PhD, because I wanted access to more. And I wanted to make sure that I was doing everything in a good way, and learning how to interview and talk to indigenous communities I wasn't familiar with. And yeah. Yeah, okay, so the question was, what's the meaning of hair in my work? So actually, I take a lot of my titles because I get very scared that I'm doing my I'm better now. I took some courses and I've got my grammar books, but I'm always scared I'm going to use the wrong Lakota grammar. And so that is straight out of the dictionary. It was like the example sentence for hair. And I was like, indeed, my hair is heavy, and that's a great title for something. Thank you, dictionary. I always wonder who's going to finally notice that all of my titles are from this one dictionary. But the hair captivated me because for a lot of reasons. I started to braid my hair really long with fake hair because I knew that there was a weighted significance, and because I thought it was interesting, all the tech I was using, and I wanted to artificialize some part of myself. So I thought that was a funny way to do it. It's a little bit of extruded plastic. But then kind of as I got deeper into thinking about it, I was starting at the Initiative for Indigenous Futures, and we were asking ourselves, like, what part of ourselves can be extended in this cyborg way, but in a really like grounded indigenous, like, how can I ground my decisions about how I'm making new technology for my body in real long-term understood knowledge, not in some sort of like anybody can be a cyborg, like any part of my body can be a cyborg. I don't subscribe to any of, I want to think about it from a Lakota standpoint. And the very clear, obvious answer was, if a version of me, or a 7th generation descendant, or intellectual descendant, or artistic descendant was out there wandering in the world, what part of their body would be changed by an AI, embedded? And very clear the answer was hair, because hair is a part of us that feels out into the world and is culturally significant in that it is something that can be exchanged, something that can be burned. When people pass in our lives, we cut all our hair off. That's why my hair is really short right now. They had very long hair previously, and you have to keep cutting it in order to give it away and to thank them. So yeah, it's a little bit about hair. And then you can't make an ethical AI because no part of the process at this point is transparent or knowable in a way that we can choose where our materials come from and our relationships with them, or the mines, or the people who work in the mines, or the people who should be owning those areas or in control of them. So it's a very simple, that's one aspect the way. So we could talk all day about how unethical the AI is. So I know my work is a failure when I set out to make it, which is great. It's freeing. Any other questions? Don't know when to stop. Oh. It's still the best. Wekinator's the best. Yeah. Except now we're probably right this second, Devin's at the computer trying to make Touch Designer and Wekinator and Ableton and Bluetooth devices talk nicely to each other, which is kind of our next project. So, yeah, thank you.